So you found yourself looking for information about a DUI. The Tampa Legal Team, we've got to know a thing or two about DUIs. But if you have a friend or you've been through it yourself, ultimately it can be a scary thing. And sometimes we want these things to go away as soon as possible. Helps us psychologically to be done with them. But really, you could be setting yourself up for a complexity of difficulties later on. And you might know that, but you're not necessarily accepting it. And just taking your time and doing the right thing when it's in front of you, when you can, is the best advice you can possibly get from a lawyer. And one of the other things I think is really important too is the law doesn't tell you you can't drink and drive. That's not what it says. It says it's a risk. I'm using these words to paraphrase a bunch of statutes. It does say it's a risk, but it doesn't say it's illegal. It says it's illegal to drive a vehicle under the influence of alcohol or a controlled substance to the extent your normal faculties are impaired. Take that for what it means. Law enforcement officers might have an opinion of it. State attorneys might have an opinion of it. I have an opinion of it. You have an opinion of it. Jurors will ultimately make those determinations, and a good lawyer can help navigate you to the right conclusion. And what happens, I think, like many things, is one side just becomes so entrenched in their position that they don't want to budge. And maybe that's you, right? Maybe you clearly are impaired and you don't want to acknowledge it, but the good thing the Constitution gives you some rights, and you can, fight and cross-examine and get due process and require the state to hold their feet to the fire and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's good. The other side is not that, doesn't have those types of benefits under the law, okay? They have to prove it. They're not allowed to have confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a scary thing. It's why we have the presumption of innocence. It's why we have the right to cross-examine witnesses. It's why we have the state must prove this case beyond the exclusion of all every reasonable doubt. So with those tools in mind in your head, have some confidence that by pleading not guilty on your DUI, you're setting yourself up to make the right decision. Whatever that decision may be, it's going to be the right one because you took your time, you consulted with a good lawyer, and it might not be the first one you speak with. So I do implore you, if you don't talk to a lawyer that seems to grasp this concept of your rights and the complexities of a DUI, because they are, you could be setting yourself up for just as much failure, except for you might be wasting your money as well. So one of the things I think about, and I heard this a long time ago because we do training for other lawyers in the past, and between my partner Joe Registrato and I, we've tried hundreds of cases to verdict, and on DUIs we've represented thousands, or supervised attorneys who've represented probably tens of thousands of people with DUIs, especially here in Tampa, Florida. So one of the things that I think about is the first thing that the officer sees, and it's the stop of the vehicle, and I compare that to, well, what does somebody with their normal faculties do? And one of the assessments for law enforcement is, how does this person that you're suspected of DUI respond in an emergency? And if I had gone out to the Blue Martini or a bar or anything like that, and I'm driving home and I'd had something to drink, and before I get home I'm pulled over, and it could be for a perfectly legitimate reason. The light could have turned red as I go through it, or I didn't put my blinker on to turn left, or something along those lines, and the officer finds out or comes to believe that I'm impaired. Well, first of all, I might be worried about that, okay? You might be worried about that. In fact, in my opinion, that might be the biggest emergency that you're going to face after having drank, is being pulled over by a law enforcement officer. And what do? You pull over. You do the right thing. Officer's not going to see it that way. It's up to you and your lawyer to make sure you point out what it is that you did right. And if we watch a video, there's going to be 6 or 7 things that everybody's going to do wrong on a video with regard to field sobriety exercises, but there's 110 things that they're going to be doing right. And on that issue of field sobriety exercises, these are not proven tests. These are tests with clear faults, clear error we know to exist. And theirs are just things that the officers are going to use to point out things that you haven't done right in a test that can't be done right, we know, applied across the board to everybody. And if you're not prepared to address those things each step of the way, you're setting yourself up for those failures in the future. So like I said, get in touch with a lawyer, go to court, plead not guilty, see what the evidence says, see how you're going to address it. And once you do, you'll be on your way to defend yourself in a DUI the way you should.